Hello everyone. Let's close this series of videos with a final question on the real side of consulting, the challenges. So the question is, what are the toughest challenges you have faced in your consulting career and what advice would you give to someone in the first few years to handle them well?
There was one you asked about how do consultants build significant strength, and I did mention it earlier, but I want to hit home again before I answer that question. That is, you must find mentors. So if you want to be brilliant in a specific field, find someone who's already brilliant at it. And they're not just going to teach you; you're going to have to give them something as well. So you're helping them. Like usually, it's making them money. Like the guy who really helped me, who's my consult, I was with my apprenticeship mentor on Friday. My aeronautical apprenticeship. I was 17, 18. I started at 16, but I moved into the engineering technical office when I was 18 or 17 and a half, 18. And so he was with me from 18 to 21, and I was with him on Friday, and it was fantastic. He brought his wife along and we drank beer and all the rest of it. And he was my mentor, and he's still around and doing well. And and through the years I had other mentors. And me meeting him is partly to do with deep respect. So you don't go through your life just sucking what people can give you and then dispersing of them. It's again that karma thing. You must give back. It's one thing another fellow taught me a long time ago. You give, you get, you give, you get, you give, you get. You don't want to get. So there's a lot of these philosophies that are really true to success, higher purpose thinking, spiritual thinking, if you wish. So you must find a mentor in your consulting and in the field that you love. And maybe you have more technical expertise. Let's say today you have deep expertise in AI applied to the banking industry. Find a consultant at one of the big firms who's a banking person who wants to drive the AI solutions practice. Find out who they are and sell what you have to them, and they'll teach you the consulting while you give them the technical knowledge for the AI. So but again, if you're passionate about it, I mean, I've been using AI recently, and boy, it's just incredible what's happening. Unbelievable. And I'm so excited about how I'm trying to conceptualize what disruption it's actually going to do. Like, I think it's going to disrupt the entire educational sector. It's going to disrupt so much. And I haven't figured out exactly how, but I'm enjoying the journey of trying to find out how it will because I enjoy learning. Another thing I learned personally, I love learning. I realized I was at my most happy when I was learning new ideas, new concepts, right to this day. Like every single day, I'm reading something that's expanding my mind. And I have a community of people, one guy in Texas who's another, was a top Lockheed stealth expert, but he just loves, I mean, the guy's obsessed with learning, geopolitical things and so on. So you find yourself communities like that. But find a mentor, number one, and every single phase that you go. Eventually, you have to become the mentor because you get too old that you need a mentor. Eventually you become the mentor. I mean, I had the transition from always looking for a mentor to being the mentor, and probably that happened about 20 years ago. Well, no longer maybe. But I don't look for mentors any longer. I mean, that those days are gone, and it's an interesting experience when you no longer seek it. But even at Lockheed, even the guy I was selling my consulting skills to, paying me a lot of money. He was well, slight mentor because by that stage I was getting older, but he was a mentor to some extent. But he was an employee director at Lockheed. But by that time, maybe 25 years ago, 20 years ago, I didn't need the same mentorship that I did in the early years. So in your first 15 years, you want to keep finding mentors, um, but learn specific skills. So that's that. So next thing, the challenges. Like I said, you're going to be criticized when you first go in as a junior. You're going to be told that your writing, nowadays they're all using AI, but I'll just give you my expertise. Your writing wasn't good enough. When I was first a draftsman from the shop floor and a 18-year-old on the drawing board, the head chief planning engineer came up and said, he said, son, he didn't call me son, forget what he said. He said, my boy, that drawing needs improved. That's not happening because my letters and all was hopeless. 5 months later, he comes back. He says, "Oh my goodness, how it has improved. I was using templates, to do my. This is for draftsmanship, for design tooling for aircraft structures and machine shop planning and so on. And I was designing the tools and so on. Well, everybody prides themselves for their penmanship, and I still have it. You can never lose it. So he told me, but I didn't. I took it. I said, right, I'm going to learn it, and I did. And through the years, you get bosses, and they'll say, I'm not giving you. You're only getting 2% raise because on these areas here you didn't perform well. You perform well here, you meet the expectations, but you're not exceeding them. You've got to be able to take all these critiques and not take it personal. And you will find that um, you'll be upset with some of your bosses slash mentors because they're talking about your shortfalls. But you have to have the maturity to accept it. And there could be situations where there's dysfunctionality, that there is a boss holding you back because you are or you're moving beyond them. That happens, no doubt. So you have to recognize that, and then maybe you have to move on. So there are toxic superior subordinate relationships. That happens. But you want to be able to identify that and then move on, because that could end badly. I was lucky in not about 90% of my situations like that, 90%, because you you feel it when you're being hired that it's the right fit, but there are mistakes made, no doubt about it, there's mistakes. So you want to make those when you're really young. um, and then when you're running your own entrepreneur, you've nobody to answer to but yourself, and so you've got to obviously you have to answer to the client, but you're not having to go back to the head office and play the politics at Deloitte, for example, or KPMG, and then go back into your client. Your office is your office, whether it's in your home or in another place. You're the politics, right? So it's easier. You have less dynamics to deal with. So you want to make sure that overall architecture, um, the political architecture, both your employer and the client, or if you're an entrepreneur, that you're aligning yourself to the client needs. So the challenges are, as I've said, all the way through making sure that you're able to handle critique well. Also making sure that you identify who your enemies are in your client, because you will have them if you're at a C level. If you're just a junior data gatherer or doing data analysis, you're not threatening anybody unless you're interviewing them and making judgments. Then you could have problems. But when you're definitely in middle to senior management consulting roles where you're dealing with, and there's others there that are afraid of you, they're afraid of what you might find, they're afraid of what you might recommend, they're afraid of what you dig up, then you can have enemies, and that's a challenge. So that's a big challenge. The other challenge is the energy to travel to around the world. So if you're in a marriage, if you're female, I tell my students this, female students, if you're in your mid 20s to late 20s, or even early 20s, if you did your masters and you went straight into Deloitte or PwC or whoever, and you're a female and you're married and you want to have children, you've you're in trouble if I mean, obviously it's not difficult to boom 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 have a child, get pregnant to have a child, but you have a career there, and while you're traveling you're exhausted, and so those childbearing years, those critical, now you can still have it in your 30s, obviously you could, but young women have to be careful what path they choose when it comes to the family and stuff. And similarly, a husband, um, you could be in a, you know, have young kids and be on the feet in the traveling so much that you miss the first 5, 10 years of their life. So these are home challenges that you might have. And in fact, marriages are strained when one partner is away all the time or coming back late on a Friday night, right? You're flying, let's say you're flying in from Los Angeles and you have to stop off in St. Louis to get to Toronto, whatever it happens to be. And it's like 5 or 6, 7 hour, 8 hour journey. And you're arriving in your home and you've all this traffic to deal with in Toronto to get from the airport, and you have the customs to deal with, and you have your all that stuff that you deal with. You're spending practically 10, 15 hours maybe traveling every Friday, getting back, and the next day you're exhausted. You have a wife or a husband that wants your attention and your time, and you don't even have the energy. And then on the Monday you're away, you're back again. And you do that, and but the money's big. You're building your house and but you're not having any life. These are all personal family challenges. And in the workplace, you're going to have negativity from some of your client. You've got to deal with that. You've got to be able to deal it going into a room and feeling the coldness because there's a gang up against you. So you got to get on top of that. You have to read it and see it and go to the CEO and say, look, there's issues here. We have to deal with it. We have to deal with it very sensitively and subtly. So those are those are big challenges, and just the mental exhaustion. You fall in love with the client practically. You love them so much after you deploy and you see all the good work, and they love you, and then you're leaving. You leave to go to start all over again. Like it's like to a new client, it's like sadistic. You once you finally achieve the situation and you've got the success and you're accepted, you're moving on to the next one to go through the same rigmarole. You see, because you start off and you've got to convince them that the CEO is convinced you can do the job. 20% of the executives, but there's a lot against you. So and then you've won them over, and then you go to the next one, and it goes on and on and on. And you say, well, why do you keep doing? Well, many consultants after 5 years or 10 years of this give up and they become presidents or vice presidents in their clients. That's what they do. And then they usually last 3 or 4 or 5 years and get back into consulting because they get sick of the routine. They get sick of the steady state, and they may not have the personality to deal with steady state politics. I didn't. I like to go in, have some challenge to do in management on a business, make it happen, get out, in, out. And you then can form long-term relationships with clients. So I still have a 20-year, 26-year relationship with one of my clients. And for the last 10, it's been my student projects. Every year we get we're doing one right now with one of my long-term clients. So it went from paid consulting for 15, 14 years, in and out, 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 in and out. And you have to know when to get out and when to get back in. You can't just linger just to make money. You get out. And they know that, and they keep bringing you back. Lockheed was 4 years. Bombardier was 7. Safran, big aerospace, was about 7. And these things change when the executives change. I mean, I'd still had Lockheed. I'd still have if the executives who were there when I was hired were still there, but they all retire. That's another thing you've challenged. You form these great relationship with these executives. Once they retire, unless you've formed it with younger people coming up, you won't be retained. And I used to form it with younger people. So I was able to do that. But after a while, it becomes exhausting because you're having to reestablish new relationships over and over again. And that itself is a challenge. You know, you put a lot of effort in to your clients, you know, helping them look good. It's about helping them look good. Another challenge is if you have a client, I had one for many years, and he declined. He was younger than me, maybe by a good 6, 7 years. But he basically got himself in personal trouble. So that demise of him was the demise for me of that particular industry sector. And I could have continued, but I loved working with him. It was a wonderful person, but he had individual demons. So these are things that some people, when they get to the very top, they can't actually handle the power from being at the top. It goes to their head. So when you're dealing with very senior level executive positions and so on, there's a lot more at stake, and nothing is routine. Things change, and there's new challenges that businesses face, and you have to be able to keep up with all those new challenges, and you have to keep ahead. One other thing I was taught in consulting, you don't want to be too far ahead. If you're too far ahead, you lose them, and then they can't get value from you. But you don't want to be behind either, else to say, why do we need this person? You want just to be a little bit ahead and keep them, bring them along. So if you're way ahead here, that's okay. Know that you have that knowledge, but learn to package it, bring them along. And you can call it milking it, you can milk it out. But if you're too far ahead, you lose them. Like with new ideas, new concepts, new ways of thinking, new systems. You want to ease them along to the level that they can absorb, but you never want to fall behind. Or, I mean, some become lifelong friends, and some are my lifelong friends, and some of my mentors are my lifelong friends. But 90% or 80% of clients are not lifelong friends. You know, you're there to help them, and they love you for it. But it is a business relationship, so you can't fall behind either. They will let you go, or they will not call you back if you're not staying ahead of the game. Those are challenges, and those things have to be managed. It's like not giving them too much, but not giving them too little. You have to give the right message at the right time in the right way and bring them along. I was taught all this. I had a mentor at Ernst and Winnie at St. Louis, and he was from Cleveland. He passed away, a wonderful person. And he taught me that. He said, you're too far ahead. I was only a young fella, but I was so obsessed with the US Air Force computer integrated manufacturing program. I was studying it all myself. So I was bringing that to the table, even though I wasn't even an American, but they took to me. But he said, you're too excited. He says, just ease them through. And it stuck with me for life. I realized you can only expect your clients to absorb knowledge and new behaviors and new methods as the ability that they have to absorb it. You can't think that you could walk in there, sprinkle some dust, and then 5 weeks later everything's working. It can sometimes take many, many years. Yeah, and it becomes your own survival. These skills become your instinctual. You know that if you don't deliver in the right place, in the right way, at the right time, and so on, you know that you could be jeopardizing your own survival. So you learn to be able to survive by thinking this way. Okay, that's that. You can ask any more finalized questions if you wish, or wrap up.
Yeah, like I don't know, I cannot
One
explain
other
it.
thing,
Yeah,
engineers are very difficult when it comes to change management. They are very resistant because there's a lot of egos there, and it's all to do with the I did mention this earlier. Engineers like if like fast moving consumer goods, the management people in those environments like food production, pharma, and so on, they don't have the same technical staff. They have researchers, which is different, chemists and scientists and so on. But the production staff are less educated usually. Well, that's the wrong thing to say. They're educated, but they're not in high technical engineering science. But the management is very highly educated. Like the management of these consumer goods manufacturing companies and all are very highly educated. Where in the aerospace industry, it's mainly engineers that are the management as well. So the thinking is very different. An engineering project is different than a fast-moving goods business. One's production oriented, one's engineering design and manufacturing engineering oriented. So the skill sets are different. In the engineering, you're dealing with much more, I guess, highly technically competent people. And so the resistance is much more difficult from that sector. But that's why I chose it, because I came from the same sector. I am an engineer. I was an aerospace manufacturing engineer, mechanical engineer. So I had that same mentality. So I knew how they thought, but I saw that as my niche. I could beat other customers and competitors out of that because I had a unique set of skills. So, and I fostered and packaged that unique set of skills. So I knew that they were difficult to deal with, but I enjoyed them very much. And it's a challenge, but again, with if you know who you are and you package your own skills to match the needs of your client and the psychological, the social, political, and the technical, of course, like I said before, you better be good technically, whether it's business process management, strategic planning, IT, and if it's AI or machine learning, whatever it happens to be that you're bringing to the table, you better be an expert at it, no doubt about that. But then the skills that get you to the top are all these emotional skills and what are called the soft skills. Okay.
That is a wrap up for this series. Professor Stephen C. Armstrong, thank you so much for such a generous conversation. I really appreciate your time and perspective. Thank you all for listening. Bye.